Last week, history was made when the UN Declaration was tabled in the provincial legislature.
We are at an important moment in history. This new law is a critical step towards true and lasting reconciliation. If the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples is passed, British Columbia will be the first province to bring these internationally recognized standards into provincial law.
Here at the Vancouver Convention Centre, Indigenous leaders, lawyers and government officials discussed what UNDRIP will mean if it is passed into law. From 2011 to 2016, Grand Chief Ed John served as the North American representative to the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Peoples. Since then, he's worked tirelessly to see UNDRIP become a reality.
Sitting in the negotiation room in Geneva at the United Nations under the Human Rights Council and prior bodies, Human Rights Commission, never thought I'd see a day like this. Never thought that we'd see a government standing up and say, yes, we will adopt these international standards and apply them in British Columbia.
Rai Moran from the National Centre for Truth and Reconciliation says there is a lot at stake for survivors of residential school and their families if Bill 41 is passed.
As we collected our statements as a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, all we heard was the systematic, concerted, long-term violation of these articles through the experiences and statements of residential school survivors.
UNDRIP has 46 articles that provide a clear framework for recognition of Indigenous rights and title, says Mary Ellen Turpel-Lafond.
Has certain key concepts that are very important for provincial scope of authority, but then talks about having an action plan. And the provisions on the action plan were inspired, at least for the First Nations side, by international and UN bodies that have looked at substantive implementation of UNDRIP and the need to have meaningful processes.
Grand Chief Stuart Phillip of the Union of BC Indian Chiefs says the legislation is long overdue.
I think once we begin to develop the policy framework and different practices, more inclusive, I think that we'll all look back and say, wow, we should have done this 40 years ago.
The UNDRIP bill has passed its second reading with full support from both sides of the BC legislature. Tina House, APTN National News, Vancouver.